Vigil for Charlottesville victim cancelled, but mourners meet at crash site. Tensions remained high Sunday as the city and nation grappled with the aftermath of deadly violence between white nationalists defending a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee and opponents protesting white supremacist views. A planned Sunday night vigil at the University of Virginia in remembrance of Heather Heyer, who was killed Saturday, was cancelled due to a credible threat from white supremacists, according to a statement from organizers. But marchers gathered anyway, honoring Heyer at the downtown cross street where she was killed. Jason Kessler, the local organizer of Saturday's Unite the Right rally, tried to hold a news conference earlier Sunday in front of Charlottesville City Hall, and it quickly descended into chaos. Protesters blared horns, rang bells and shouted "murderer." Kessler's voice was drowned out, he fled but was tackled, and bedlam ensued before police officers intervened and spirited him away. It was unclear if he was injured. "I tried my best, but once again violence rules over speech and ideas in Charlottesville," Kessler tweeted a short time later. "The First Amendment is finished, it seems." Charlottesville resident Jeffrey Stricker said he attended the would-be news conference to protest Kessler and other white nationalists. "Their views have been out of date for a long time," Stricker said. "They're not welcome." It was another moment of mayhem for the city, home to the University of Virginia and now a battleground for clashes pitting white supremacists, neo-Nazis and other alt-right groups against counter-protesters ranging from Black Lives Matter to anti-fascists. That battleground turned deadly Saturday when Heather Heyer, 32, was killed after a car slammed into counter-protesters peacefully marching away from the scene of the initial violence. 10 people remained hospitalized in good condition Sunday, according to the UVA health system. "My heart goes out to Heather Heyer's family," Governor Terry McAuliffe tweeted Sunday. "She died standing up against hate and bigotry. Her bravery should inspire all to come together." The Justice Department said it will open a civil rights investigation into Heyer's death. Hours after the deadly car crash, 2 state troopers died when their surveillance helicopter slammed into woods near the scene of the protests. McAuliffe, a Democrat, denounced right-wing extremists Sunday and spoke of healing at a local church service. "I see a future that is brighter," McAuliffe told worshippers at the historically black First Baptist Church. "I see a future where every single child, no matter where you were born, how you were born or who you love, has the same opportunities in our great society." Charlottesville Mayor Michael Siner, speaking on several national TV news shows Sunday, called Heyer's death a terrorist act and blamed white supremacists. "This is a city that is praying and grieving," Siner told CNN. "We had 3 people die yesterday who didn't need to die. 2 things need to be said over and over again: domestic terrorism and white supremacy." After Kessler's failed news conference, he released a video statement on Twitter blaming city officials for Saturday's violence. He said they failed to separate the protest groups and were ill-equipped to handle the melee that resulted. "The city was so concerned about shutting down the speech, they weren't willing to do their jobs," Kessler said. Scores of marches and rallies against racism were scheduled Sunday from Washington, D.C., to San Francisco. The Indivisible Project, an advocacy group that opposes President Trump's policies, listed many of the events on its website. The group said the protesters will come together in solidarity with our brave friends in Charlottesville who put themselves at risk to fight against white supremacy. Most of the events were scheduled for later Sunday, but scores of protesters showed up for a 1 p.m. ET rally in Greenville, South Carolina. They carried signs proclaiming, "Hate crimes have no home here," another suburban mom against white supremacy, and white supremacy equals hate crimes, prejudice and ignorance. Trump spoke out against the violence at a news conference Saturday in New Jersey, condemning in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry and violence on many sides. Trump, however, drew outrage from critics for failing to blame white nationalist demonstrators for the violence. McAuliffe on Sunday urged the president to call out the white supremacists for who they are, for their hatred, for their bigotry. Some Republicans had been quick to do so. House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican Wisconsin, tweeted hours after the tragedy that white supremacy is a scourge. This hate and its terrorism must be confronted and defeated. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, issued a statement calling Nazis, the KKK and white supremacists repulsive and evil and called the car crash a grotesque act of domestic terrorism. Appearing in Memphis on Sunday, the Reverend Jesse Jackson called for a White House conference on violence as well as racial hatred. The founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition blamed Trump's rhetoric for the violence, saying the ignorance and hate and fear and violence in Virginia is being fed from the top down. Traveling in Cartagena, Colombia, on Sunday, Vice President Mike Pence said Saturday's violence was in no way a reflection of the good and decent people of Charlottesville or of America, according to a pool report. He noted that Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos' son had recently graduated from the University of Virginia, and added, "We have no tolerance for hate and violence from white supremacists, neo-Nazis or the KKK. These dangerous fringe groups have no place in American public life and in the American debate, and we condemn them in the strongest possible terms." The president also made clear that behavior by others of different militant perspectives are also unacceptable in our political debate and discourse. Pence also took issue with the media's criticism of Trump's statement, saying, "We should be putting the attention where it belongs, and that is on those extremist groups that need to be pushed out of the public debate entirely and discredited for the hate groups and dangerous fringe groups that they are." He said the administration would bring the full resources of the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute those responsible for the violence. A Department of Justice official familiar with the investigation said on Sunday that the department and the FBI have already devoted a massive amount of manpower to this matter, with scores of federal officials working with local law enforcement in Charlottesville and in Maumee, Ohio, where the suspect lived. The official said federal hate crime charges could be applicable to the case, and that the investigation is not limited to the driver. "We will investigate whether others may have been involved in planning the attack." Saturday's Unite the Right rally was called to protest the planned removal of a statue of Lee on horseback from a Charlottesville park. The violence began Saturday morning, and McAuliffe issued a state of emergency at about 11 a.m. About 500 protesters among the white nationalist and alt-right groups left the park shortly after state police, using megaphones, declared the gathering an unlawful assembly at 11:40 a.m., about 20 minutes before the rally was scheduled to begin. Still, the violence escalated, and police said more than a dozen people were injured in the melee. A short time later, Hare was killed and 19 people were injured when a Dodge Challenger rear-ended a sedan, which then hit a minivan that had slowed to allow the counter-protesters to cross at an intersection, police said. The impact pushed the vehicles into the crowd, police said in a statement. The Challenger fled the scene but was stopped by police a short time later, Charlottesville police said. The driver of the car, identified as James Alex Fields, 20, of Ohio, was charged with 1 count of second-degree murder, 3 counts of malicious wounding and 1 count of hit and run, police said. He faces a court appearance Monday. Hare was a legal assistant at a Charlottesville law firm. Friends described her as fun-loving but outspoken against racism. She always stands up for what she believes in, said Lauren Moon, friends with Hare since 3rd grade. One of the injured, 20-year-old Natalie Romero, told CA TV that she was recovering in a nearby hospital after suffering a small skull fracture and several facial injuries. The University of Virginia student said she wasn't sure if she would be physically able to attend the first day of classes later this month. Romero said she was suffering from a lot of back pain and neck pain. Just a lot of bruises. I think when fell, I bit my lip. And so my lip is really busted and my face looks pretty horrible right now. Hours after the car crash, The helicopter slammed into the woods. State police identified the dead troopers as Lieutenant Jack Cullen, 48, of Midlothian, Virginia, and Trooper Pilot Burke Bates, 40, of Quinton, Virginia. Cullen was a 23-year veteran of the force and is survived by his wife and 2 sons. Bates spent 3 years with the force and joined the aviation unit last month. Visiting our VA state troopers this morning to share prayers for their fallen brothers and to thank them for their great work this weekend, McAuliffe tweeted Sunday. The Charlottesville City Council voted in May to sell the Lee statue, but a judge issued a temporary injunction blocking the move. That prompted a torchlight protest by white nationalists. More such protests have followed. Don Gathers, a deacon at First Baptist Church, said he felt very much numb by Saturday's events. Much of this lies at the door of the White House and right at the president's feet because he created this climate, said Rathers, who also chairs the city's Commission on Race, Memorials, and Public Spaces. He made them think and feel like all of this was acceptable.